Hey guys, what's up? Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/eggs show. That's EGGSSHOW. Audible has more than 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or just about any device you can imagine. As Eggs listeners, you can download a free audiobook today by visiting audibletrial.com/eggs show.
Sometimes what you want is not what you need. Sometimes what feels good later makes you bleed. This thrill ride's over for me and you. Wide awake and leaving you. Wide awake and losing you. I'm going back to tried and true. Insomniac, since you came back, I'm covered up in regrets. I'm counting down the minutes till I leave. Awakened from naive reverie, still dreams are where I wanted to be, but now they've crashed in reality.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Eggs. On this week's show, we have Atlanta-based singer and songwriter Maggie Schneider. An exciting and energetic performer for as long as she can remember, Maggie has burst onto the Atlanta scene, dropping her career-changing EP, Tinted Glasses, earlier this year. You can learn more about her at rockinmags.com or check her out live August 22nd at the City Winery in Atlanta. She's a rising star, and we're excited to have her on the show. Please join us in welcoming Maggie Schneider.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, so just by way of introduction or by way of sort of explaining how this came to be. So Maggie was introduced to us by a guy named Caleb, who is her manager, and we've had a number of his people on the show, different bands and stuff that he works with, and Maggie is one of his, like, I guess, up and comers or the fresh new crop of people. And so we wanted to bring her on the show and sort of talk about, the beginning stages of her music career and go from there. So anyway, so Maggie, it's really exciting to have you on the show, and we're stoked to learn about you.
Yeah, and sorry for the dog barking in the background. I told James, I'm staying at a friend's house right now, James and Lacey, and I told them I'd tag him in the show if their dog barked, so they get tagged in the show.
Yay! I'm sure it's a good dog.
Cool.
Yeah, it's an awesome
So
dog.
Maggie, tell us a little bit about your background. Where do you come from? You are only 19 years young, which makes me feel ancient. But you told us in sort of pre-show interview and stuff like that you started out singing quite young. Do you come from a musical family, or what's your background?
So it's funny. So I am the only musical person in my family. I am an only child and just have lived in Atlanta my whole life. I've always been just a huge fan of music. From a really young age, my mom would drive me to preschool and she would play Bon Jovi songs in the car. And so subconsciously, like, I learned all these songs and I would sing them with her until, of course, we got to my preschool. She had to roll the windows up because she's like, I don't want them to think I'm a bad parent. But, starting from there, I just have loved singing. And so I really started to perform in musical theater. I was in a bunch of musicals and plays, and I was an intern at a nonprofit theater company here in Atlanta. And so I did a lot of work there. And from a young age, that really gave me the confidence to perform on stage and really made me passionate about that. So as I continue, growing up and watching artists like on the Disney Channel, like the Jonas Brothers and Demi Lovato and all of these up and comers, like, write their own songs and perform in front of so many people, I thought, I want to do this one day. And so I begged my parents for guitar lessons. I've been playing piano for a really long time, and I've just been, taking steps to, become better and just grow every year.
So in the theater aspect, what were some of the leading roles you had? Like, if there's any that kind of stood out in your mind, and like, what were your favorites?
Yeah, one of my favorites was definitely playing the baker's wife in Into the Woods. That was super fun, and I got to do that one with some best friends. And then I also directed a couple of kind of musical theater concerts of my friends and I singing songs from different musicals, and they had different themes. And so one of them I put on was called Broadway Rocks, and so it put together all of the rock musicals. Like Green Day has a
Oh, that's cool.
musical, which was really, really fun. So we sang songs from that. Even Rock of Ages, like so many great shows that combined my two loves of rock music and theater. And that was really fun to put on with friends.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Broadway. I've seen like Les
Yeah.
Mis and Wicked and all the good ones, and I like for Wicked, for example. I just loved the production value of it. Their lighting guys and everything they do is just
Yeah,
insane. So
every little part of those productions, like it's so well thought out, and it's great to
yeah,
go to a show. And I love New York. And I try and go there as much as I can. And so some days I'll be like, I'll just go to the tickets booth in Times Square and just pick up a cheap ticket to anything. And it's super fun.
just for inspiration and see what it is
Yeah.
and kind of
Yeah, and
yeah.
yeah, it's unique, and theater has definitely inspired the music that I write too. Just because I've been around it for so long, and there's so many pop rock musicals coming out now that they go hand in hand really well.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So, coming out of preschool and singing Bon Jovi, what changed to like, okay, I want to do this now as kind of like I want to focus on this and I want to, see if I can make a career out of it. But what age did that happen and how did it happen?
So I had been in band programs like School of Rock and similar things like that, starting.
Not trying to interrupt you. Can you talk a little bit about School of Rock? I think we might have a connection to the CEO of that group. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yeah, we're have reached out. We haven't heard back, but we do know people in the program here, and we did have a guest on our show who is close with them.
How does that work? Is it like just a monthly fee you can come and practice and network with people, or what is the premise behind School of
Yeah,
Rock?
so I went to one that was very similar, called Camp Jam, but it had the same structure. But basically, yeah, they have summer camp programs where for a week or two, you pay like a one-time fee and you get to meet other musicians your age, and so they help you form a band with the kids there. And so they had a year-round program like that with, I think, a once a month fee where you met other musicians in the program and you saw who fit with you and your music style. And so once a week, I would go and meet three other bandmates who I became friends with, and we just practiced in their space.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun, especially how old were you at the
I
time?
was 12, 13.
That's
Yeah.
rad. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was super fun. And so I started doing that really young. And then I think the moment where I actually thought, well, maybe I can actually do this more seriously was when I was 15. I saw on a venue's Facebook page called The Masquerade, and they're a local venue here in Atlanta.
It looks like a fun venue.
It is.
Like I checked out their website and the show's coming up and everything. It looks like a really cool venue.
It's honestly where I've grown the most, I feel like, as an artist, and they've given me so many opportunities. So they had a Facebook post saying they were looking for a local opener for a singer-songwriter named Allison Weiss. And I thought, why not email them? Just why not? And my big motto is, if you don't try, you're never going to know if you would get it. So why not send an email out, see if they would choose me as a local opener? And so I sent my links. I think I had like 30 Facebook likes at the time. I didn't have any music recorded. I had only live videos from coffee shops and things. But I sent my stuff and they said, hey, why not? We'll give you the shot. We'll give you the gig. And so I played, and then after that performance, they just kept inviting me back. And then I thought, well, hey, maybe I can actually do this and tell my own story, through my songs and, continue to play around. But that was definitely a turning point for me.
Well, yeah. And not to jump ahead too much, but we did mention you have new EP out this year, and the lead single was 695 North Avenue, which I assume must be the address.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that.
Is homage to the Masquerade. So clearly that was an impactful moment in your career.
Yeah, definitely. And, I've met some of my best friends there. I've headlined shows there. I've opened for favorite bands there. Like, it is just a place where I've had so many wonderful memories. And so I wanted to commemorate the Masquerade and all that it means to me in that song.
Very cool. So from that very first show, I mean, obviously you got the bug, I guess. And how did sort of the career progress after having played the Masquerade that first time? And what came next after to come off that high?
Yeah, so that very next week, they asked me if I wanted to open for a band called Courage My Love. And so I automatically accepted that. And it doesn't really happen where, you play two shows pretty much within a week of each other, especially at the same venue. So I thought, I'm going to keep playing shows. And then my mom, because she's super supportive and I'm very lucky to have supportive parents, she goes, you should just record some of your songs, like just to put out on Spotify and Apple Music and everything. And I was like, wow, I never really thought of it that much because I was so focused on like playing shows and doing the live thing. So I went to a friend's studio a few minutes away from my house and just tracked.
Okay, so usually the friend's studio consists of like a beat up mic they bought at Radio Shack.
It wasn't, luckily.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, I know. And it was great because he's in a band. His name's Lee Jennings, and he's in a band called The Funeral Portrait, and they tour a lot. But luckily, he had knowledge of production and had the equipment to do all of that.
Well, that's cool. So did you have, 3 or 4 songs already prepped, or were you kind of going in and like, let's write some stuff and just jam around?
Yeah, so I had about 7 to 8 songs that I had already written that I was just playing live. And so I thought, why not just put them all together in an EP? So that was my first release called Insomniac. And so,
I actually really enjoyed that album, by the way. The title track is really good. I like it.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really happy with how it came out. And of course, like hearing the recordings when I first got them made me feel really giddy. Because like you said, it is like a bug that musicians get once they start playing shows and start putting their music out there. And so when he sent me those tracks, I was like, wow, this is really cool. I want to do this again and again.
Yeah, that's awesome. So is Insomniac based on the fact you just can't sleep at night, or?
Luckily, I can
I have
sleep
the
at
same
night.
problem.
No, it's really about me growing as a person, and also it was heavily inspired by pop punk bands like All Time Low, and I'm a huge pop punk fan myself, so bands like All Time Low and Green Day and Blink-182, and I was just like, I want to make a product that is inspired by them and has a bunch of different emotions, whether it's kind of anger with the song Insomniac, or if it's more of a happy energy, and for me it's You. Like, I just wanted to explore a bunch of different things.
Yeah, so I caught this band in Portland a long time ago, and I cannot remember their name to save my life, but I saw them twice, and their lead singer reminds me a lot of you. She was like an opera singer, like professionally trained, but they did like the pop punk,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
they killed it with so much energy. And I have their CD at the house, and I'll make a note to go home and find it and find their name, and I'll send it to you. But when I was listening to your stuff, it's still bugging me because I can't remember the name of this band, but I loved them. They were good. But I really like your style. I like the combination of like the female lead vocalist with the pop punk. And when you do it right, it just sounds really awesome. And I can imagine your live show is a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it really is. And I've finally now nailed down a permanent backing band, because usually I've played acoustically or with an acoustic band with a few friends, but now like I've honed in on the full electric guitar sound and full drum kit, and it is so fun. Like, it's my favorite thing to do is honestly just run around on stage with a mic in my hand. So it's
That's awesome. So speaking of pop punk bands and liking, guys like All Time Low, the latest EP, Tinted Glasses, was produced by Rian Dawson from All Time Low.
Yes.
Is that right? So can you talk a little bit about that experience? I mean, how did you guys make the connection in the first place? And then, further into producing the album?
Yeah, for sure. So, it really happened through just crazy fate. And I'm a big believer in fate when these things happen. So I co-wrote a song with a band called the Everyday Anthem. And they're not a band anymore, but they were based out of Atlanta and working with Rian on their full length a couple years ago. And so we played a show together, became friends, and worked on this song. And so they invited me to come up for a weekend and record my piano tracks and also my vocals, because I sang on the song too. So while I was up there, which was a dream come true, and I never thought anything like that would happen, Rian looks at me and he says, we should work on some of your stuff. And I was totally shocked by that. Like, I didn't even expect that to happen. So I said, really?
Were you still like fanboy status, where you just, the fact that he was in the same room with you is awe-inspiring, and then he asks you for that, and you're like, oh
exactly.
My God.
And it's funny
right?
because when I first went into his studio, he goes to shake my hand, but I go in for the hug. So immediately,
no.
Yeah, immediately I was just like, oh no. But luckily, he was really pleased with how the song came out and invited me back. So less than a year later, because that was in the fall of 2016, and I went to record Tinted Glasses in the summer of 2017. We worked on the EP. It was such a cool experience. He's just a super supportive person, and it was fun being creative and collaborating with him, because he knows so much. And All Time Low, like they've been around for, I think, 11 years now. So he definitely knows what he's doing. And it was super surreal and validating for him to say, I really like these songs, and I think you have a lot of potential. And that was just a huge moment.
Well, so how do you balance, or maybe you can talk about it a little bit. I mean, I guess you've never been older, so you don't maybe have an understanding of how it might be done if you were older. But, being so young, I would imagine that a lot of the, sort of more experienced people who've been in the business a long time tend to take you under their wings, maybe, versus try and rip you off or something. I wondered, can you speak, I guess, from your experience as a young person trying to come up in the music business and find your way? Because, like, I'm sure that you've come across maybe a handful of snakes by now and some other things like that. Can you talk a little bit just about sort of the experience of, I guess, of youth? Because, like, I mean, both Mike and I have worked with musicians and bands for a long time, but they've all been quite a bit older. We haven't worked with somebody that's really come from being sort of a child performer, a young entertainer, to trying to cross into that independent space where you're out there on your own. And I wonder if you just had any, I don't know, maybe horror stories or just interesting stories that you could tell about your rise from, where you've been to where you are.
Yeah. So, I'm a very optimistic person. And of course, I feel like when you start so young playing music, you keep almost that naivety that, it's just about the music, and that's how I have always felt. And I still feel that way, no matter the branding or who works with you. For me, like, the music is the most important thing, and it needs to still have the heart in it, or just maintain that sincerity. And luckily, I haven't had any horror stories. I'm lucky that I have really great people who work with me. For example, I have a publicist named Jenna Pell, and she is in the Catalyst publicity group. And so I reached out to her like a year ago, and I didn't know anything about how to promote my music and really get it out there. And I really took a chance. And so I messaged her and I said, hey, you've worked with a lot of my favorite bands. I was wondering if maybe you could take me on as a client. It would really mean a lot to at least get your feedback. And so she has really been amazing, and I'm very fortunate to be working with her. And so for me, obviously, I try to be cautious and, try and make sure that I trust the right people. I make sure I'm surrounded by positive people. But yeah, I mean, it can be difficult at times, especially as a female musician. There aren't as many female role models, especially in rock music, to kind of look up at and say, well, how did you get through this? And so, it's a lot of navigating, but I'm definitely lucky to have people that are positive around me.
Yeah, no.
Have you had the chance to work with like Hayley Williams or anyone like that?
I wish.
Right? You guys would be perfect.
I know, and she's amazing. So that would honestly be a big dream collaboration, for sure. But there are, a really, really great number of female artists, and just in any way, whether musically or photographers, bookers, dancers. There's so many in Atlanta, and so it's nice to network with them and discover what they make and just be supportive of one another.
That's really cool. When I think Atlanta and I think music, I think hip hop.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't think a good rock scene was there just because I'm not from there and I haven't really been around to experience it. But from what it sounds like, you guys have a pretty good like alt rock scene there. Is that true?
We do. We really do. And it's really apparent when you go to like bigger rock shows. Like I performed this year at Van's Warped Tour when it came to Atlanta, and
that had to be awesome.
Yeah. Like I think it was almost sold out or something. Like it was crazy. And so it's refreshing to go to those kinds of shows and see people, because it feels like a small, tight-knit community, but there really are like so many more music fans that are into other genres other than like hip hop and rap stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like it's time for a Young Baby Tate collab.
What?
Young Baby Tate is this hip hop singer from Atlanta. But this dude, Gary Vaynerchuk, who's like sort of one of these rah, you can do it guys, is backing her. And
really?
But she's kind of a funny character. So I think that would be a perfect collaboration.
That's interesting.
I don't know. Yeah. So speaking of Warped Tour, I read your article. You're an awesome writer, by the way. I don't know if we covered that yet, but I read your article about how Warped Tour changed your life. Can you talk about that? Because it's almost like a full circle story. Like you started at 12 or 13, went to Warped Tour, and then 4 or 5 years later, you're playing there. That's kind of cool. I mean, like I'm kind of the same way. I'll set a goal from something like that and then try and hit it 4 or 5 years later. And when it actually happens, it's really cool. Yeah. So and it was the last Warped Tour too, and it's something you can actually say. I played at Warped Tour, and no one else from here on can.
I know.
Which is just
I made it just in time.
Yeah, perfect timing.
Yeah, like it's really surreal. And I remember like after I played, I just started crying, because I was like, this is crazy. How did this happen? So like I said in the article, I went to my first Warped Tour when I was 12. And I was super new to the scene, obviously, and the only band I really cared about, even though there were so many other bands that I love now that I wish I saw back then, the one I wanted to see was All Time Low. And so they played last, and they played in the amphitheater around 8 o'clock at night. And I remember I was not prepared for the heat at all. It was just a super, super hot day. And so I just sat in the amphitheater with my mom, just waiting for them for hours until they came on. And so immediately when they came on, and I was really far away in the amphitheater, like I was sitting down in one of the seats really close to the lawn. But when they came on, I just felt this joy. And so I immediately felt better. And I jumped from my seat and I was just singing all of their songs. And so that moment, I thought, wow, like this is special. And they really just united thousands of people in this one amphitheater. So I thought maybe I could play this one day. And I always hoped it would happen, but I never, truly believed it, because it's hard to think about that could happen just 5 years earlier. So I get an email back in the spring saying, congratulations, you've been accepted to play Warped Tour, because this sponsor, Cool Suppliers, and they're a really cool popsicle company. So 2 thumbs up for Cool Suppliers. Them, and then a nonprofit called Learning is Endless teamed up with Kevin Lyman, who's the founder of Warped Tour, and created a stage for more independent artists and bands to play on every stop. And so once again, I thought, why not? I'll submit my stuff and maybe I'll get accepted. And so they accepted me for the Atlanta date, and I played at 1 p.m. that day, right before it rained. So I got there in perfect time. But it was great. And I saw so many friends there cheering me on, and even new faces coming up and telling me they enjoyed my set. So it was a super fulfilling experience.
Well, that's awesome. Just the fact that you can say that, I played at Warped Tour.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
That's just cool stuff.
Pretty sweet legacy.
Oh, definitely.
So, you recently, I think on the 1st, opened up for He Is We. Rachel Taylor's actually been on our show, and she's an awesome person. How was that show?
It was so fun. And like I said, I finally nailed down my live backing band. And so that was the first show with all of those members. And it was so fun. We practiced for 2 months leading up to the show, and all of it was worth it. And she's great. She's super great live and definitely a super sweet person. So it was really nice to introduce myself to her and see her perform. But yeah, it was great. Also, there were so many other female fronted bands on that bill too. There was a band called Rivals that performed on that bill too. So it was fun, mingling with other female singers and sharing our experiences.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So did she tour with her whole band, or was it just acoustic? I've seen her do acoustic before.
She toured with a backing band, but it was more like an acoustic band. They had a smaller drum kit and maybe 2 acoustic guitars and a keyboard. So it was still it sounded really, really full and great. But it was still intimate because she had the chance to tell stories and talk about the meaning behind every song. But yeah, she had a really great set.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no, she just came through Salt Lake not too long ago, and unfortunately we weren't able to make it out. But so I heard that this tour was going very well, though, so that's exciting.
Oh, yeah.
So beyond just, well, I guess, maybe before we jump that far ahead, let's talk a little bit about management. So this is one of the subjects I would like to cover with you, just because of sort of your age and sort of the independent scene. But I'm curious what life is like for a musician growing up now. Back in the day, maybe we didn't have as much, social media or other channels, where you could really publish yourself and put yourself out there. Obviously, the scene today is completely different than it was back then.
Yeah.
The way the bands make money, the way that everything works, the whole business of music has changed pretty dramatically. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about sort of, I don't know, things that you've learned or things that you would avoid, things that you have found that worked well, just stuff that you could talk about that might help, either other musicians or other people trying to find a spot in the music business. Because I think, at least if you're messing around on Google, so much of what you read is still sort of the old way of doing things.
Yeah.
But I wonder what it looks like for a 19-year-old coming through it now. Like, what is the process for, I don't know, dropping music and getting discovered? And is a manager or a label important anymore? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So my number one tip would be just to stay creative. And luckily, like you said, we have so many more resources now to release our music independently and to actually do it successfully. One thing that I have utilized a great deal is social media, but not just posting, hey, I released a new single, check it out, but finding new ways to engage people who've never listened to my music. So one thing that I have done for, I think the last 6 months at least, is I'll post mini covers on my Twitter and on Facebook of me covering songs from some of my favorite bands. And these bands are mostly pop punk artists, and on labels like Hopeless Records and Fearless Records and Fueled by Ramen and all those great guys. And so I will post covers and I'll tag the bands and add a few hashtags so that fans of those bands can go and listen to my cover. And I've gotten a lot of success on that, whether fans check it out and then go listen to my music, or the bands themselves will share my covers or reach out to me and say, hey, your cover was really, really great. I, really look forward to hearing the rest of what you're doing and your own original music. So for me, that's been a really great way for me to perform and gain interest, but do it in a unique way. It's not just me releasing my music, just kind of randomly sending it to people.
Yeah, and I also noticed that you when you do post on Twitter like that, you'll do like a poll. You'll say, "Hey, I've got these 2 songs. Which one would you rather me do next?" And I like the fan engagement aspect of that. Like, hey, and they'll comment and you reply. And I noticed you have like over 5,000 posts on there, and that's some time and dedication to Twitter.
Oh, I know. And I try and post just once a day. Whether it's a cover or if it's something stupid like my love of mozzarella sticks, which there are a few of those.
There's nothing stupid about mozzarella sticks.
Right,
just so you know.
That's what I'm saying. But yeah, I try and engage people and make sure that I'm also covering songs that they're interested in. And you hear this from a lot of bands, but it's true. Like without those fans and without engagement and listeners, like, why make music? Like no one's going to hear it. So I think it's important to take their opinions and voices into consideration with those kinds of things. So I definitely think social media is huge. And also, people talk about this a lot too, but Spotify playlists. I've submitted my music to a ton of friends, also curators and independent blogs and playlists, because that can help a ton, whether it's, a playlist that has 1 listener or maybe 200 listeners. It makes a difference and it allows people who, may not know you or have heard of you before to, check your stuff out.
Yeah, I noticed you did something recently with Balcony TV out of Atlanta. That looks like a lot of fun. That looks like it would be something that I would enjoy doing.
It was. And there's so many outlets and things like that now. Because I love what they do. And I love that they bring their artists to really cool locations, and in that way, it makes a video like that super interesting. And there's other programs.
Right?
Huh?
And it's really intimate, right? It's just them and your band, and you're kind of on the rooftop and just playing for no one. But I think that's a really cool kind of, a nice backdrop, and it's just a band, and it's very kind of like secluded. So it's not like a big show, and they just happen to be filming it. It's pretty raw, and I like that.
Yeah, and there's another, I guess. Maybe organization. I don't know exactly what to call it, but they're called So Far Sounds. And that's super fun. It happens in every major city, even out of the country, and they put on intimate performances in unique spaces. So I performed at a So Far Sounds event in Atlanta back in February, and it was at this super cute Airbnb in Atlanta.
I love it.
And so they invite people, and people sign up to be included in these different shows in every city. And so they invite people maybe a week in advance without telling them the location until 24 hours before the show. So it's super spontaneous and fun, and people are just sitting on the lawn or sitting in a really cool intimate living room. Like it's a really, really cool environment. So I think think if people utilize more creative ways of sharing music, I think the industry will become a lot more open to independent artists.
And I think that's awesome. I like the smaller groups, the up and coming, not the ones that made it, congrats, but the ones that are still fighting the fight, I like supporting them. I think it's neat. So what's next? What's the future looking like for you?
It's looking busy, luckily.
That's
yeah,
good.
no.
That is great.
I'm performing, like you guys said, August 22nd at City Winery, which is going to be super fun. I'm opening for Small Town Poets, so that's going to
Awesome.
that's going to be great. And then I have a new project of music coming out soon that I'll be announcing this week. Which I'm really excited about. I have a writing partner named Alex Crane, who is in my live band as well, but he's one of my best friends, and we work on a lot of stuff together. So the project I'll be announcing soon has to do with something we've been working on together for some time.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool. Well, yeah, no, let's talk, I guess, then a little bit about the EP. We had your first single that we talked about that was sort of based on the story of the Marquis, or whatever it's called, Masquerade. Yeah. And then, but I wondered, you've got a new single out now called Pretend. I wondered if maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I really wanted to put something new out because it feels like January was so long ago. Like time has gone by so fast. But I wanted to put something new out. And I have a friend who's an artist named Wolfie, and he's independent and super good and has found a lot of success independently, which is awesome. But he reached out to me because he wrote Pretend, and he said, hey, like, would you want this song? Because I think it really fits with your aesthetic and the type of music that you write. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So he sent me the song, and he lives in Orlando. So I recorded the track, sent it to him. He produced it all, which was super fun. But the song, it's about falling in love with your best friend and, that being really, really fun, but that also being super difficult because you don't want to ruin that friendship and you don't want to screw that relationship up. But at the same time, you want everything to work out. So I've definitely been in that experience before. So I thought it was super relatable and a lot of people can relate to it. But yeah, I'm super happy that people like the song because it's a little more on the pop side from what I usually do, but I love it, and I think it's super fun, and glad I put it out in the summer.
Well, can you talk about?
Do you see that kind of being your thing? Is doing singles, or are you going to do a full length album, or just kind of play it by ear?
I think play it by ear right now, because in the past, the very first thing I released was a single. I put out 2 singles and then put them on Insomniac. Right after. So I'm hoping the next thing I release will be a full collection of songs, whether it's a longer EP or a full length. But I'm playing it by ear right now. I've written a ton of songs that I'm dying to release, but I just got to pick the right time to do it.
Well, and I wonder if how much of that is the business nowadays. I mean, if there's anything I've learned from modern hip hop, it's that people don't release albums anymore. Everything is a single. And I don't know if that's the same in the rock genre or not, but maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, it really depends. I think in rock music we see a lot more of bands starting with an EP, whether it's 4 songs or 7 songs, and then seeing how that does for a little while, and then going on to work on a full length. For me, I did it kind of a little bit backwards because I put out a 7-track EP, but then I went with Rian and worked on 4 songs because I wanted it to be as cohesive as possible. And so I thought a smaller number of songs would give me the opportunity to dip my toe in with some really professionally recorded music, see how people like it before moving on to like a longer project. So I think people do it a lot of different ways, but I think there's more EPs first, maybe one or two, then go to a full length after that.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, it makes sense that it would be personal preference, but I wondered if there was anything, I don't know, if the industry had just evolved to a point where people are getting their music one at a time, or listening to it on a streaming service. So the value, I guess, of having a whole album at once it's just not necessary anymore.
Yeah, I know that All Time Low just put out 2 singles that they've kind of packaged together. So I've seen that too, where it's not just one single, but they release 2 within a week, which is fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds awesome. What else would you like to say about the album? Like, is there any little Easter eggs in there or anything that people should be aware of, or does the music sort of speak for itself?
Well, for me, just Tinted Glasses is all about how I've grown as a person, especially in this past year, and really delves into like the highs and lows of relationships, whether they're friendships or more romantic ones. One thing that I'll say is Chuck Bass, which I don't know if you guys know. Maybe you do. Maybe you're Gossip Girl fans secretly.
Mike is. I didn't want
to be honest with you. I heard the name and then I listened to the song and I was not expecting it to be as mellow as it was. Like I was thinking Chuck Bass would be like, fat bass line.
The problem is you were thinking of Rob Bass.
Yeah, it's you guys need to go on Netflix after we talk and just start watching Gossip Girl, because Chuck Bass.
You get the popcorn right. I'll be over in 10.
Yeah, Chuck Bass is a character on Gossip Girl, and so the song is about how I can't be bought and the importance of honesty and integrity over, money and those types of things. And so in the show, which isn't a spoiler alert, you can look it up afterward. But Chuck Bass is a character who, pretty much sees money as just the most important thing, when in reality it's honesty and knowing yourself and being who you are and all of those things. So that's a fun little pop culture reference. And it's fun. Like, I love hearing what people think it is if they haven't watched Gossip Girl. Some people think it's about like a fish, like a legitimate bass.
The one that hangs on the wall at Grandpa's house.
Yeah, exactly. So that's super fun when people ask me, so who's Chuck Bass? And so then I say, go on Netflix, watch the show. You will totally understand the reference now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but that's
well. So you started to tiptoe around something, and as we start to wind down here. We sent out before the show, we sent out a little questionnaire and you just send back some answers that sort of help us formulate questions and things like that. One of them, because we usually are looking for sort of highs and looking for lows and stuff. You mentioned, or one of the questions is, what is your worst failure? And your response, I think, is really interesting. And I think that this might be a good sort of conversation to have before we wrap up here. You say that your worst failure is not believing in yourself when you should.
Yeah.
And I think that little bit of information is, it's, first of all, it's pretty introspective for a 19-year-old. I wouldn't expect you to have discovered that just yet. But I wonder if you would sort of speak to that a little bit. And I guess, because, you're a musician, you're a person who's already comfortable putting yourself out on a stage or whatever. You're not probably an introvert who would rather sit home and watch Gossip Girl than get out and hit the stage. And so I wondered if even for you, if your failure was not believing in yourself when you should have, I wondered if you could sort of talk about, I guess, finding that, in yourself when you finally sort of turned that corner and knew that you could really trust yourself and believe in yourself. And then I wondered if you would sort of extend that to, suggestions for others trying to get into the field.
Yeah, for sure. So I've always loved performing and, I've always been supported and told like, you have really, a lot of potential at this, but I always have the mindset of like, I can do better. Like I can be better. I can write better songs and have better live performances. And that's a really positive thing. But of course, in, I guess, more personal experiences, which I touch on a lot in Tinted Glasses, with the highs and lows of relationships, I haven't believed in myself a lot in that area sometimes too. And it's really interesting because, you know, I am a confident person and I believe in my music and everything. But when I have opportunities like working with Rian or, you know, opening for He Is We or those kinds of things, I'm always like, wow, like this happened, really? You know, like just not fully believing that I'm doing it. So I think in giving advice to other people, you know, my mission as an artist is to inspire people to follow their dreams, because I've always been supported to do so. You know, no matter how hard it is, because it's really hard to be a female in the music industry, and you know, there's so many ups and downs that come with that. And so for me, I feel my best when I'm on stage, and it's really where I feel most comfortable and confident in my music and in myself. And so I hope that I can give to others the confidence to spread their wings, if you will, and really do what they love, and not be held back from that. Because of course there's always times where I'm thinking, oh, maybe I can't do it, or what if this doesn't happen? But I feel like if you take it one day at a time, and if you just believe in what you're making, I think then in the long run you will believe in yourself.
Yeah, and I think that is probably about as eloquent of way to wrap up this interview as I could think of. I think that's really good advice. So I guess, unless you've got anything else you'd like to talk about, if you've got anything you want to talk about or drop before we go.
Yeah, just first of all, thank you guys for having me.
Oh yeah,
it's been,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you guys, and you know, I'm just staying busy, playing more shows, more music is coming soon, and I'd love to talk to you guys again.
Excellent. Well, can you tell people where they can find you online, on the socials, and where they can watch for this drop or this big announcement with some upcoming music?
Yeah, for sure. So my website, which has everything on it, is rockinmags.com, ROCKINMAGS. And so all of my handles are Rockin' Mags, Facebook and Instagram, and then Twitter, I have an underscore between Rockin' and Mags. So everything's consistent. My music is on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, everywhere. Look up Maggie Schneider. You can find me. And definitely I'll be posting about the big announcement on my personal page.
Great.
So just
and we're happy to make an announcement too when that drops. So
yeah, and I actually added a couple of your tracks to our Spotify playlist as well. So if you guys
we have a show list. So cool. All right, then with that, Maggie, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate having you on the show, and we'll see you all next week.
Of course. Thank you.
The summer air brings out the best best of hell, and we made it through. Me and you, living out the best moments of our lives. Me and you, in 695 North Avenue. North Avenue.